Now we're going to learn about retail, which is really a changing area of commercial real estate, with a presentation by Karen Rich of Malone Commercial Brokers.
Hi, I'm Karen Rich from Malone Commercial Brokers, and I'm happy to be here today. I know it's been a long day for everybody, so I'm going to try to stick to my 20 minutes and tell you everything that I know about retail today. So I usually start off by looking at some of the trending words in real estate. We're not going to talk about those right now, but I'm hoping to have time at the end that we can discuss those a little bit. I'm going to start us off by looking at the net absorption rate for the numbers. So we have about, at the end of last year, we had about 6,450,000 square feet of available inventory. And at the beginning of the year, we had 386,000 square feet of vacancy. At the end of the year, we had 210,000. So as you can see, we absorbed about 175,000 square feet of real estate in 2019. This slide just takes a quick look at what types of centers we look at. And we have the power center, the community center, strip center, and the single tenanted buildings. The only thing that our office does when they're putting this together is that they look at freestanding buildings of 10,000 square feet or more. And I did want to say thank you to Marie and Mark Malone in my office for putting together this retail vacancy and occupancy report every year. It's very, very helpful. This tracks the vacancy rate by town, and there's 6 towns and cities in Greater Portland. So we have Cape Elizabeth, Falmouth, Westbrook, Scarborough, South Portland, and Portland. So I think if you take a look at this, you can see that Cape Elizabeth and Westbrook right now have a 0% vacancy factor. It looks like South Portland, has a higher percentage, but they also have about 2.9 million square feet of available inventory. Skipping that one. So the average lease rates really haven't changed from the end of 2018 to the end of 2019 for this type of lease real estate. It went up from $16.98 to $17 a square foot. This tracks the vacancy rate for Portland versus national. And we've gone down again this year from 5.6% to 3.27%. And on a national level, they've gone up to 13.4%. But I think what's interesting to note is I went back and checked from the first year I had done this report, which was 2012. And basically, our available square footage for an inventory for retail hasn't deviated hardly at all. Some spaces come off, a few new builds have come on, but pretty much we haven't had any significant retail construction in southern Maine during the last decade. I'm not saying there hasn't been some. Scarborough Gallery's been built, but there's been very, very limited amount of construction. And I think that that's what's contributed to our low vacancy rate, because what happens is a vacancy gets created, and then that vacancy gets filled during the year, typically. So that's what has helped us every year keep that vacancy rate down. This takes a look at all the new restaurants on the peninsula. And I think, as we all know, in 2018, the city of Portland was named Bon Appetit's Restaurant City of the Year for, I think, the entire country. What's happened this year, this showed up on my Facebook feed a few weeks ago, is that Maine has now become, I don't know if any of you have heard of Lonely Planet, but it is it's a real estate app and a traveler's app and a traveler's magazine. and they put together all these, the best whatever. They've come out with the best 10 regions in the world to travel to, and Maine is region number 4 in the world. So I think that we're going to see, if we think we've had a lot of tourists up to now, I think that a lot of travelers that maybe haven't found Maine yet are going to continue to find Maine. And so I think that speaks to all these new restaurants that have come out. Every year we just keep adding and adding to our inventory. This is a few of them, and this tracks a few of the breweries, distilleries, and wineries that opened in 2019. And these are some other restaurants in Greater Portland. We did lose a few restaurants that closed. Walter's closed in 2019, which was a perennial Old Port favorite. Andy's Old Port Pub on Commercial Street closed, is already due to reopen. Silly's closed. Famous Dave's closed down in Scarborough. My understanding is that has been released, and someone else is going to be opening up there. This refers to some major news and retailers that have closed their doors or are about to close their doors in 2020. And it includes Payless Shoes, Forever 21, Kmart, AC Moore is closing all their stores across the country. Pier 1 is closing some of their stores across the country, and Abercrombie & Fitch has closed most of their stores. This includes Olympia Sports and Family Dollar. But I think what's key with that is that in 2019, Olympia Sports was bought out by another store, and I believe that they're closing select stores. Family Dollar in 2017 was purchased by Dollar Tree on a national basis. So I think what's happened is that they have found that the Dollar Tree model is actually performing better than the Family Dollar stores. So where there's a situation where they're in the same location, they're tending to close the Family Dollar stores as opposed to the Dollar Tree. Every time I want to look at the markets in the Old Port in downtown Portland, I talk to Pete Harrington at Malone because he's kind of the downtown guru. And so he's been telling me a little bit about what's been going on in downtown Portland and Old Port. Joe McGowan's moved in there this year, as has Toad and Company and Fat Face. And here's a couple of the other restaurants that I hadn't mentioned earlier. So the Old Port and downtown Portland, including all of Congress Street and that whole area in Commercial Street and the East and West End, is really doing very well. On a vacancy factor, there's almost very little vacancy. This takes a look at the lease rates. Now, you'll remember a little while ago when we were looking throughout Greater Portland, which did not include the Old Port, and downtown, we had about a $17 a square foot lease cost. Here on Middle and 4th Street, we're looking at $25 to $35 a square foot. Commercial Street is $30 to $45 a square foot, and Lower Exchange is still kind of the sweet spot, and that's at $40 to $48 a square foot. Granted, those spaces are typically, 800 to 2,500 square feet, but it's still a significant price per square foot. But what's happened, I believe, is that the retailers that come here are joining other national retailers that are doing great on a per square foot basis, so they can justify what they're paying on a per square foot basis. These were some of the retailers that have come to the Maine Mall. So I was referring a little bit ago about what's happened is that when we get a vacancy, we tend to fill it. So that happened with the Toys R Us building. Bernie that vacated last Christmas time. Bernie and Phil's came in during 2019 and took that over. At the Maine Mall, Bon-Ton space has been vacant for 3 or 4 years, and that's now being filled completely by Jordan's Furniture. What's happened, part of what's happening in retail in Greater Portland is that we have done what's being done across the country, which is that we are repurposing space. When there's a vacancy, that space is sometimes getting repurposed for an experiential type of retail. And that in particular has happened at Clark's Pond. when the big stores moved over to Scarborough Gallery, part of that got repurposed for a church. Some of it, now these two other tenants have moved in 2019, the Maine Warrior Gym and the Axe Pit. I took a moment to just take a look at Freeport, because a lot of what I was reading was saying that Freeport and Kittery were experiencing a lot of vacancies because a lot of these national retailers were closing their doors. But when I looked at Freeport, that really doesn't seem to be the case. I think that Freeport has done a really good job of diversifying. They're diversifying and either repurposing the space and putting in non-traditional retail, or they are looking toward local retailers to take over for some of these national franchises that have closed their doors. So I think the other thing that is, I think, very prevalent in Freeport, and I think a lot of this is credited to LL Bean and the Freeport Economic Development Corporation, is that there's a lot of experiences and family experiences that are happening in Freeport, and that's proving to be a driving force for bringing a lot of customers to that area still. Obviously, LL Bean's is a big part of that as well. So one of the new construction that we've talked about for years here now is Rock Row in Westbrook. And I think, as we all know, during 2019, they opened up their concert venue. There was a little problem with noise, and they seem to have resolved a lot of that, but the summer will be the telling part of that. But what's interesting about it is that when you read about retail, instead of everything shrinking, across the country, there's these mega projects that have really become very popular. And what's happening is it's all part of that whole experiential retail. So that you have, you're going to have a concert there, you have the movie theaters, you have the grocery shopping with Market Basket and Starbucks, and there's some sort of a paper store that's going there. And I also heard that Old Navy has signed a lease there. So I think what's happening is that this is our kind of mega project for Maine. It's nothing compared to what is happening in other parts of the country, but it's big for us here. So I think if they can make a success of that, it's going to be, it's a big thing for Maine. But I also think that there are some issues, there potentially could be some issues there with they're also talking for some lifestyle development there that would include office space and multi-storied residential. And that really remains to be seen where that's headed. But I believe that they have a good start with it. There's been a little bit of new construction in the Old Port and in Portland. This was a building that was built and then has been leased by Jen and Joe in my office. And I think that this is typical of what's happening in the Old Port and downtown Portland, is you have all these residential buildings and office buildings that are being built, but no new retail construction. But in a lot of cases, you're getting the first floor is going to be retail. So there's going to be room there for leasing to some of your kind of smaller local retailers as well as restaurants and so on. So I think that's where we're seeing some growth happening in the Old Port in Portland. For example, the building that our office is representing on Commercial Street, there's going to be some retail condos there for sale or for lease, and the old Rufus Steering site. So I think that you're also going to see that down on the east end where all that new construction is taking place. There also was one building built by the Maine Mall area, Scarborough Crossing, and that was leased to Nothing But Cakes and Jersey Mike's. I think what's interesting about any new construction going on that's strictly retail is that nobody in Greater Portland is doing that on spec. They have signed leases typically when any building is about to be built that's just strictly retail. A little different from what I just talked about a second ago in downtown Portland, where the main focus of the building is something other than retail. These are some significant retail sales. 1041 Brighton Avenue was sold by Greg Perry and Charles Day for $2.99 million, 115 Main Street in Freeport for $1.06 million was sold by Jessica Estes and Nick Danbury. I'm talking too fast. So 291 Main Mall Road in South Portland was sold by Joe Porta. I'm sorry, I've blanked out on the other person, I apologize. And First Look Plaza in Scarborough was sold by Drew Sigfridson and David Jones for $3.3 million. And the last significant sale was at 450 Payne Road in Scarborough, which was sold by Mike Anderson and Mark Malone for $3.77 million. When you look at all the sales that have taken place with industrial and office and so on, this is really a fairly low amount of retail sales that takes place year after year. There just aren't that many that are coming on the market. So I have a few minutes to talk about some of these trending phrases and words in 2019. One is this retail apocalypse. So it's hard to say that Maine has experienced any type of retail apocalypse when we have a 3.27 vacancy rate. I don't think that we have, but I think that a good portion of the country has. And the reason I think that Maine hasn't is what I mentioned earlier, is that there just hasn't been that kind of new construction. So when somebody closes, we've been fortunate that somebody closes and somebody else steps up and takes that space within a year or so. So there's never been this huge vacancy. That could change in 2020, as I think some of these retailers, the list I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are closing in 2020, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The other key word that gets talked about is experiential retail, and that's key for retailers that want to fight against all the online shopping and provide an experience shopping in person so that people are wanting to get out of their houses and go shopping and have some experiences along with it. I think the most important word that is phrase that's important is this integrated omni-channel strategy. And those retailers that have done that the best are the ones that are going to survive. And it really doesn't matter if you're a small local store or you're a national retailer. You need to offer the opportunity on a number of different platforms for people to shop with you, whether it be on your website, if you have a good app, if you use the data well. All of those things are very important to people as they're deciding where they're going to spend their dollar. And those stores like Lululemon are doing that very well. There's a number of stores that are really, they're actually growing their prototype store because they're able to attract people and keep them there in the store, as well as providing a great online opportunity for them. The one thing that I had hoped to talk about a little bit, and I haven't had I decided not to devote a slide to it this year, is marijuana CBD sales. So what's happened, I think as we all know, it's accounted for a lot of the industrial sales. But what's happened during 2019 is that a lot of these stores that even prior to it being legal have gone to other than a medical dispensary, have opened up storefronts just because they want to be positioned to be able to offer when everything is cleared, and they can offer that. There are communities like Portland that is going to say they're going to have it, right now they're calling it 20 retailers that they're going to allow. There are other communities that are saying as long as you're in the zone, the correct zone, we're not going to limit that. So I think that that's going to be a big story for next year because of seeing what exactly shakes out during 2020. Usually I include a rumor file slide because I like to talk about rumors. I got nothing this year. There are no rumors that I've heard. I'm hoping maybe somebody out here has some, but I haven't heard any rumors about what's happening in retail, so my apologies on that. Predictions for 2020 and beyond. I I know a lot of people feel that there's a lot of negativity associated with just retail and what's going to happen because of all these online, everyone's doing all their shopping online. But I know, just looking at myself personally and family and friends, is that everyone seems to do a lot of online shopping, yes, but they're also doing a lot of shopping in stores. And these retailers have made it so attractive for all of us to shop on any number of different platforms that I believe that you're going to see a lot of the retailers that have been able to offer that omni-channel strategy and do it well, that they're going to continue to thrive. So I'm feeling positive about retail moving forward. Thank you all very much, and safe travels home.